So my hammock ripped when I got into it. It is now about 1:30. So I'm now on the ground. And I think I'm going to try and rejig the tarp to make it slightly more appropriate for ground sleeping. So this is my new improvised ridge shelter tarp for ground sleeping. Not too bad. It's not meant to rain. More just for psychological comfort and security. Morning. Surrounded by little gold crest. It's lovely. Wee charm of gold crest. Must have been about 10 or 15. Just in these trees right beside me and above me. What a lovely way to start the day. Coffee and gold crests. These are interesting looking mushies. Kinda look like apples with plums. But I'm not gonna eat them. So last night I was getting into my hammock at 1:30 in the morning, and luckily didn't have too much whiskey, because when I got into the hammock, my OEX Bush Pro, it started ripping and I hit the deck, and yeah, and I think it's beyond repair. The OEX Bush Pro hammock became a little bit of an extra pillow last night. Luckily, I had this ground sheet with me, which is literally just one of those £1 Tesco pound shop jobs, which I never used to bring, but actually it was a win. And used my underquilt, which I have the Craghoppers Eco blanket, or whatever you call it, over or throw, Eco throw. The great thing about this is it has a toe box in it, and also it's synthetic, so the condensation was building up with my body heat, that on that, and you could, underneath that was really damp, but because that's synthetic, it protected my feather sleeping bag, so that actually worked really well, and it was toasty. One of the other little things I treated myself to recently were the wee Lixada Booties, and they are brilliant. I always get cold feet, regardless, even in the summer sometimes, and those little Booties are brilliant. So there were definitely a few tree roots underneath me and not even ground, but I found a way-ish and got a couple of hours sleep. Sort of got through the night. Unfortunately, where the hammock was set up wasn't the ideal ground camp scenario. I found it really hard, especially in the forest. Like, I am so hyper alert. So any little noise, I'm having to rationalise every noise that I hear. It's the interpretation of the noises. I think I heard a fox eviction yonder, and then also in this forest there's deer, there's pine marten, and then all the other wee critters that run about. But the critters that are probably the hardest to deal with are the wee critters in your head. I think in my mind is like a forest, and it's rarely quiet. It's rarely quiet. A few hooded crows tried to start dawn chorus, and it would seem like nobody was buying into it for a while, and then eventually a few of the other doing started, but it was almost like, yes, I've made it till morning, and then the light comes up and I feel like I've survived. And if I saw any of those critters in daylight, I'd be so delighted and happy, and there's still a chance I might see some of them, but it's so funny in the dark, in the night, the feeling, I think it's the feeling of vulnerability, of being alone in the dark, lying down, and there's something about that triggers, maybe it's a real primordial kind of defensive kind of thing, from the days when we lived in forests with wolves and bears, but now we've got stoats, or a mouse, or a pine marten at most. Yeah, but I think I want to get a wee trail cam to set up, and it'd be really interesting to see the reality versus the little fantasy there, the imagination. So spend the night here, have all my imaginings about what I've seen, or what I think is definitely a pine marten scurrying around, or definitely a deer munching away at some grass nearby, and then look back at the trail cam and see if it was actually anything at all. I think that'd be really a fun thing to do. I'm going to hang out here for a bit. It's just nice being here in daylight, watching all the birds waking up and start their days. I've got a few things that are new, like this Flames Creed 3x3 tarp, still nylon. It's like costs about £45 on AliExpress. It's about £30 cheaper than the DD Superlight 3x3, which is about 3x2.9. And I'm really happy with it. It's got loads of attachment points on it. It feels strong. It's lightweight. It's like maybe a little bit heavier than the DD, but that's probably because it's 3x3 and not 3x2.9. But yeah, really happy with it. Another thing that's for the win are these Asos insulated trousers. These are great. Like, I love that instead of like taking my trousers off and putting on long johns and then putting my trousers back on again, and I do feel the cold, like as soon as I feel the temperature drop, I'm not comfortable, and even in the summer sometimes I feel that. Actually, definitely during the summer I felt that, but having these and just putting them on over the top of my trousers and instantly getting that heat and comfort in my legs is so nice. and because they're not expensive, like they're not Montane Prism Primaloft, and they're not, you know, or they're not even like an AliExpress feather one with like fire magnet material on it. These are brilliant. So they basically will come with me camping all the time. These insulated trousers, those wee Lixada Booties, Nature Hike make them as well, and they are definitely a really good addition to the camping setup that I'm very, very happy with. Time for breakfast. I think tofu scramble and veggie sausages are on the cards. What do you think? So yeah, part of the longer story is that recently I've had quite a bit of extra time off. Quite a bit. For a fair amount of time. And in my head I was like, yeah, I want to do loads of hiking and camping in my time off. And it never happened. And I put it down to anxiety, and I suppose last week it was stormy, and that could have added or became one of the other excuses maybe for not going out. And the difference this time was I made a decision. I am going to go out on Sunday. Now a lot of factors made that easier. Like there was meant to be clear sky, like clear all day, blue sky, sunshine. Temperature was going to be 8 degrees minimum last night. That's lies. And also there was forecast of meteorite shower. And I had the Sunday off and the Monday off, so it was sort of like the ideal scenario in some ways. But the reality is, even with the ideal scenario, like, I will not make the decision to say I'm going to go out on Sunday, because I don't want to put that pressure on myself. And then I end up not doing anything, or just faffing around, and like, because I haven't made the decision, I've stayed up maybe later the night before, or had a few too many beers, or I've ended up having a second breakfast, and then by the time it gets to whatever, you know, I'm packing my bag and I'm not too sure where I'm going to go, so I end up not knowing what to pack, and then that takes longer, and then I end up not going anywhere because it's like too late to go anywhere. And because I don't drive, I have to use public transport to get to places, trains and buses, and so there's a lot more faffing around, I suppose, with that. So yeah, I just need to make the decision. But there are definitely a lot of anxieties about coming out on my own, I suppose. And I think I've been spoiled over the past year and a half, 2 years, because my bros, my bush bros who I go camping with, have been much more available in the past 2 years. So I've kind of been spoiled with being able to camp in company. So I think the last solo camp I did was about a year ago. And it was the same stuff going on, the anxieties about it, getting out and making it happen, and then through the night in the dark forest, like all the what's that noise, all that kind of stuff. And I would like to get to the point, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but get to the point where I can come into the forest, accept, you know, the forest and what's there, the noises, and how it, like, just the nature of the forest at night, and somehow make my peace with it, or accept it, and be able to get better sleep for this to be a really relaxing place to come and have a snooze. And actually this forest I'm in now is actually the most camped forest. Like, this is where I've done so much of my wild camping for the past 15 years. So I've come here to this very spot so many times, and twice have done solo camps here, and yet it's still, you know, even though it's so familiar in so many ways, there's still room for anxiety to, like, wrap its tentacles around your brain and mess you up. So I would like, if I can get more comfortable with the solo camps, then I can get out camping more. Yeah. It'll allow more possibilities and more options, and so we'll see if this is going to be a journey of more solo camping, or if this is going to be another blip in the radar, like it tends to have been, where it's like once a year I go out in this pilgrimage where I end up feeling trapped by the anxieties. I end up feeling trapped, and if once I get that feeling of trappedness, I have this, it's almost like life or death, and I'm like, I have to push through it. Like I've done things, like I've travelled around a lot of the world on my own, and it's not because I was brave or courageous, in some ways maybe, but it's not because I was like super excited. It was because I was so aware of how afraid I was of everything. So this is when I was about 18 years old. I was so afraid of life that I realised that my idea of what a life lived to the fullest or a good life looked like didn't weigh up with how I was playing it out. So I just made myself go and into the unknowns, despite the fear. My first trip away on my own was like when I was 18 or 19 years old to France, and got like a 24-hour bus journey from Belfast to Paris, and ended up sleeping in a roundabout near Bois de Boulogne, because I couldn't find a campsite, after walking 10 miles at night through Paris from one side to the other. So all these little like unknowns and the stories that you can tell because of these things, but it's the same journey. I think we go through these cycles, and no matter what life you're in, there's going to be things that are comfortable. And you know, I have a nice flat that I love, and it's, you know, not just a roof over my head, but it's a really like comfortable space. And some people say as you get older you get more used to comforts, and like I'm 45 now, and maybe I'm in that part of my life where it's like I don't need to prove anything to myself anymore, and I don't need to go camping in the wild on my own or go jet setting around the world on backpacking adventures. Yeah, and even I've developed a fear of flying, even though I've flown all over the world. And but I look back, and it's not that I was never afraid of flying before. It's because I chose to make it happen anyway, and to somehow normalize it. And maybe that's, and I'm coming to another stage in my life where that's something at least it's up for discussion, whether that's something I want to do or want to do enough. But regardless of what the thing is, the inner dynamic of feeling trapped by anxiety or fear is something I think needs, like, I need to push through that. I need to find an inroad into it to dispel the mist of anxiety. So whatever that looks like, that's what I think I need to do. I've got sort of people use the term comfort zones, and sometimes it triggers resistance in people. I understand, like, nobody wants to like admit that they're living in comfort zones, or they're living a comfortable little life and they're not willing to go outside of that and feel discomfort. Like, nobody wants to admit that, but like there's lots of things people don't want to admit to, even if they're more honest accounts of who they are or how they're living at that time. And I know I can see a journey for me where I had lost my job during 2008 recession. I made a decision that I never wanted to go back to retail that I was in at the time, and I was offered other manager jobs as well. Like, so I never needed to be unemployed, to be honest. But I just took the opportunity to try and do something different. Like, what would life look like for me? Like, if I tried something, like experimented, but I put all my energy for change into doing what I ended up doing for about 7 years, which was gigging. So I went out busking on the streets of Belfast for years, and eventually got gigs in restaurants and bars and hotels, and I was doing that for about sort of 5, 6, 7 years. And it was a big part of my identity in my life, but I allowed all my energy for change and for me to be singing in front of people. That was a massive thing, because I'm more, well, I'm starting to realise this now a bit more, that I am quite introverted, and I didn't understand the music, and doing music and singing on the streets gave me a kind of confidence that I never knew existed in me, a social confidence that I never knew existed in me before. But yeah, all that energy for change and doing all those things was put into that, making that happen, and just go, even the gigs that could have stressed me out, like singing in front of, you know, could be 2 people or 200 people, or was something that didn't really come naturally to me, but something that I hadn't got used to, normalised in some way, and found my way with it, I suppose. But everything else became comfortable. I went to the same 2 bars every night of the week. It was just, even though it was wonderful for a while, it was wonderful, and I got a lot out of it. Also, it was just part of this cocoon I was making for myself, and it was so, like, even to go to a different bar on a night would be like, don't want to. Why would I? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So yeah, there was definitely comfort zones, and it was during that period of time that I developed the fear of flying. And, so yeah, there's a discussion going on in me, and this is part of it, is, you know, acknowledging and being honest with myself to say, yep, you're in a kind of you're on a plateau, or whatever you want to call it, and there's something beyond that for me. Don't necessarily know what that is, but doing things like this and flexing that muscle, or practicing this ritual, making these pilgrimages, is part of the opening up instead of the closing down. Should it open up? And I think that is life beyond defenses. Defenses closed up and clammed up, and it's easy to understand why people would be closed up and clammed up. There's so much out there, or that is presented to us, that would cause fear and anxiety. But I feel like love is an attitude of openness, to open. And I loved, I trained in a martial art called Aikido for a lot of years, and I loved that it had a very open stance, to the point it was almost like an embrace of the other energy, even if the other person's energy was full of violence and anger and hatred, that the response to it was almost like an embrace of that energy. Love. It can be brutal as well. Like, there's ways you can practice Aikido that are brutal, but there's something, I think, in the philosophy and its origins that is a moral, ethical, spiritual choice to not respond to fear and anger and hatred with more fear, anger, hatred and violence, but to respond with love and openness, even though it's like, it seems like the most counterintuitive thing to do. But in a world that we live in, or in the world that we live in, it's as important now as it ever has been. And that's not just in the greater world of humanity, but within ourselves, with the people around us. It's so easy to respond to aggression or anger just with defensiveness and and that tightness and that clamping down and control and the control mechanisms in our heads, where we think and think and think and think and try and control all the outcomes, and I think love is the opening. Love is the open stance, regardless of what's coming at it. What's coming at us is to stay open, and in that openness allows for creativity, to allow for the light to get in, allow for air to get in, because when we're clammed up, you know, we can't even visualize, be creative enough to visualize the other possibilities. I'm waxing lyrical in the forest on my own. Anyway, I still haven't had breakfast yet. Okay, here we go. I'm loving this wee 4-class from Decathlon little pod set. Came with this folding sport and came with this wee bowl as well. But also I tried titanium stuff for a while, and I do have a wee titanium 700ml kind of setup, but it's narrow and then food sticks to the bottom of it, gets it easily, and then it's harder to clean, and I just prefer stainless steel, to be honest. It's still really lightweight. So yeah, I've got another one of their sets, slightly bigger one, which wider base on it, which kind of can work as a frying pan, I suppose, a wee bit too. But this is a nice size, nice wide base, not too big, so still feels like a small setup. Fits, you know, the pot fits everything, the canister and stove and a few other bits and bobs. Right, that should be ready, I think. Ready enough. I said I was going to use my wee bowl, but instincts kick in. Just go and do what I normally do. Tofu scramble's been my breakfast of choice for the past few months. And the key to it is black salt. Gives it this egginess. I've realised recently there's black salt and there's black salt powder. Black salt powder is better. This little breeze is picked up, which is nice because it's blown the load. There were so many wee flies. The wind has cleared them, thankfully. Thought it was past mid-season. It's like nearly the end of October. Apparently not, but it's been quite mild, so. Why, the other thing is for the win, that tree's soaking, is these heat holder socks. You get them for about, I don't know, £7.50, 10 quid, and they're like rated at 2.3 TOG, or who uses TOG these days? 2.3, 2.4, whatever TOG. I think some are 2.7, but they're my camp socks now. I'm going to get another pair of them. So as soon as I get to camp, thereabouts, put those on and put my insulated trousers on. It's brilliant. And they're actually wearable walking, which I didn't expect. So like, I'm still wearing these now and I couldn't be bothered taking them off, but I know I'll be totally fine walking the, like 2 miles out. Oh. Walking the 2 miles out of here. Wee bit of tape over the base of the flex tail gear mini pump, just stops it turning on accidentally in your pack and then being drained whenever you actually want to use it. I just keep a wee watch battery there as well for my wee fairy lights. Final inspections for anything left behind, like ridge lines, tent pegs. Bog fest again, have to navigate this in a way. Ooh, get this right out there. Nice, lovely morning light. Into Fernland, where the river is doom. Oh. Here we go. Oh, it's stinky minky. I remember walking this trail before with blistering feet. It's so nice to be walking this without blistering feet. Although the reason for the blistering feet was wearing boots that I hadn't worn. Did 20 miles in them with close to 20 kilograms in my bag. So by the time I got to the next day, walking here, it was not nice. But this is pure bliss. Feeling good. Thank you, nature. Thank you, forest. This is a perfect time to be out in the autumn and seeing all the beech leaves. These lovely big beech trees. The light streaming in, leaves all over the trail, actually making it more visible than it usually is. Oh, this is wonderful. Great start to the day. Good start to a day off. I actually stopped because I heard the sound of a cat being strangled, which in bird terms is a jay. And there is a pair of jay over in a tree over here. Another one flew in. But yeah, the sound like a cat being strangled, but I just heard a buzzard. Here we go again. Navigating the water obstacles. Pick away. Which way looks best? Yeah, I think right. Use those wee poles. Sometimes they're actually worse than just going for the mud. Dunno. I think I actually came that way last time. Right, I'm putting the phone away. I'm gonna walk slowly along this bit because this is a wee spot where I've seen deer before. Do the splits walk. Get jabbed in the brambles. Okay, this is the one that got me on the way in. Determined to beat it this time. Can't go. It's just. It's like a lake with grass in it. I'm gonna try and go way over here to the left. Okay.
There's a birch polypore, nice and fresh, making like a bao bun. God, you look better than that.